navigating global expansion and responsible gaming and gambling, strategies for success in diverse markets.
Let me make some introductions of our amazing keynote. We have John Kamau, the founder of Betconsult Africa. We have Keith McDonnell, the director of KMI Group. And we have Andrew Maclean, the VP of Sales of Pariplay. So take it away, gentlemen.
Hi guys, John from Nairobi, Kenya, and also the founder of Betconsult Africa. Today we are dealing with navigation into expansion, responsible gaming, and strategies that you need to put in place for successful entry into new markets. With my panelists here, we have Keith and I have Andrew, and I'll go direct to the questions. I'll start with Keith. And Africa in 2014, we only had 70 million mobile subscribers. This number has grown to almost now 600 million mobile subscribers. With this internet penetration rate and also a big mobile penetration rate as well, any product that is being sold online is growing very fast in Africa. Africa is a latecomer in globalization and digitization, but also a fast adopter of internet and things that can be sold on internet. So for Keith, products that have worked in Europe have come to Africa. Some have worked, some have not. So from your experience, what do you think are products that can be brought to Africa and work? What localizations need to be done? The change of payment models. We have mobile money, which is big in Africa. So what can be done from the product that has worked elsewhere, brought to Africa and work?
Thank you, John, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in Cape Town. I've come from the UK, so we've had 3 months of horrific weather. But it's a pleasure to be here. My experience, just for your information, is based generally on localization, not necessarily into Africa, but from Europe to Asia, Europe to Africa to a degree, Asia to Africa, Europe to Latin America. And it's really about the principles of localization and how companies go about it to give themselves the best chance of success. What we've seen, and I'm a big believer in we learn more from failures, is I've seen European companies go into Asia and they put 88 on the end of their brand, maybe translate a couple of characters into Mandarin Chinese and expect it to work. And very quickly, within 6 months, they've got their tails tucked between their legs and they're heading back to Europe. True localization and really understanding what market wants requires establishing partnerships with experts in that market. One of the best exponents of this, in my opinion, is a South African company now listed on the New York Stock Exchange, being Supergroup. We saw their reports, their quarterly reports last week. I think it was $360 million in revenues. But what they've done really well over the years, John, is they've partnered with experts in every single region they've gone into, whether it be Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, Latin America, US, on a regulated basis, and they've truly understood what the market needs before they've gone about in any way trying to set up operations or market their brands. So I think, coming back to your specific question, we've seen some companies come down to Africa and South Africa and try and impose on the market what works in their core markets. That has not worked. Equally, we've seen some companies who've taken time using local experts, spending 6 months, 1 year researching the importance of mobile in particular, which as a percentage of overall revenues is as high as anywhere in the world in Africa, and then developing and delivering products and software to take advantage of that market. So I think really it's the effort that's put in up front that's helps the successful companies succeed.
All right. So from Kate, and this is a mentality we need to improve. Africa is not one big country. Africa is very diverse. Every country is diverse from the other. In Kenya, mobile and internet penetration is very high. You go to our neighbors, that is low. So brand-based works them in other countries. And also in our country, online gaming is working very well and retail is not as big. So every market is different from the other and it's not one big country. Moving on to Andrew. Local authorities have been having issues with taxation, especially when taxation is shifted to the punters. So you find in some geos, and this is being taken up by most of the regulators, taxes are being shifted to players, such that we have withholding taxes, we have exercise taxes that are charged on the punter's wallet when they win or when they bet. Also, we have taxes on companies. What these taxes are doing is they are shifting the burden to punters, makes illegal gambling work very well because they have a competitive advantage. So from your experience, what regulations do you think and that can be taken up? What can we improve on regulations? What can we improve as well on the payment models that we have?
Hi, good morning, and great to be here. And Keith, I've come from Sweden, so whatever weather you've had, mine's been worse. So, yeah, so I just coming back to what you talked about with Keith, I wanted just to add something first. I've been involved in a lot of new market entries where mature companies from other like international brands have tried to go into emerging markets. And in LATAM, just to make a comparison to South Africa, when they've tried to go into, for example, Argentina and Colombia, a lot of companies made the mistakes that Keith talked about. And what I've noticed now is Brazil is a newly regulating market, which is coming up soon. We don't know the regulations fully yet. But there's about 134 operators that are applying for the license. A lot of them are big companies from North America and Europe. And what I've noticed on the B2B side is they're much more prepared this time. They've seen the mistakes that have been made, and they're willing to learn, and they're actually looking at, in detail with research, as Keith mentioned, to get the right payment solutions in place and the right products. A lot of time spent on products that will work for that market and not trying to bring in a copycat of what they've been using in the more mature markets. So, yeah.
Okay. In terms of product, crash games have been on the rise in Africa and also I think worldwide. And way back in 17 in Africa, live betting was big. Towards 18 to 20, virtual games were big. The current era crash games are doing well, and also we have a shift towards casino, moving away from the traditional sports betting. So how can now the operators that want to start in Africa, how can they identify what products are working well, what tech is working well? How can they identify, and what games would you propose that they should take up?
Well, I think one of the first things they can do, because a lot of operators work with software providers who've got experience in multiple markets. So, you know, a lot of them are in a position to speak to their providers about what they're doing for operators in the market they're looking to go into. And, you know, without betraying data confidentiality, can understand what's working and what's not working and what that means for them in terms of developing their product for the market they're moving into. So again, this forms part of the research piece, but it's a case of simply gathering information about what's working and what's not working, and identifying the gap then between your current product set and what you need to enter into the new market. I'll give you an example. It's not Africa based, but when a lot of European operators tried to move to Asia, online casino was really about random number generator slots or random number generator blackjack. What they needed was live dealer, you know, because that was 60-70% of revenues of casino traffic in Southeast Asia. So they spoke to their existing providers. If they could provide it, they'd take it from them. If not, they have to go and get another provider to provide the solution for what they needed in Asia. And it's the same for Africa. I'm not going to umbrella Africa. I mean, I say it because I'm not going to name every country, but I took your point before. It's understanding however you get the information is working in each country, and finding out then how you best source it, whether it's internal build, existing partner, or a new provider.
Okay. In terms of responsible gaming, our friend here who was in the last presentation talks of a law in Zimbabwe of 1998. In Kenya, we are using a law of 1964. And we've been having amendments all through, but we've not had a new law. In terms of responsible gaming, we've seen operators trying to do CSR that more inclines into marketing. You find in areas where there are more motorbikes that are used for transport. They're using refractive gears for protection of the riders, but also they're encrypting, they're coding for action on those things that they're giving out. So what is the best responsible gaming practice and CSR? What would you advise the operators that are already in Africa and other parts of the world? What should be done? What is the best practice for responsible gaming?
I can start maybe. I mean, we had a really good panel earlier on that, but just to add, it's one of the panelists mentioned the regulatory partnership. Having a really good relationship between the operators and the different regulators is really important. Something you need to watch out for, and which was also mentioned, is over-regulation. I've seen that in quite a few very mature markets. So there's got to be a balance. There's got to be cooperation. And for example, there's a lot of things you can do in the game, which I think is very good. I mentioned I'm from Sweden. Having buttons in the game, having session timers to let players know how long they've played for, links to problem and help sites, this type of thing, I think is a good thing. There's also obviously the option for deposit and monthly limits, if that comes in. But I think my main advice is for an operator to have as close a relationship with the regulators and try and work together with them so that you avoid over-regulation and it's a good partnership.
I think the point about over-regulation is a really good one. And actually it's one of the key factors that drives international expansion, because I know a lot of UK operators at the moment are looking at their P&L and just finding it very difficult to make money. So for the sake of the survival of their business, they're thinking, well, what other markets can we go into? And of course, the other possible negative of over-regulation and over-taxation is it'll drive a black market. You know, we've seen it go the other way in the States where, well, I was going to say the black market is shrinking. I'm not sure it is, but that's moving towards regulation. But if you over-regulate, that's just going to encourage operators to set up offshore and target an established market. So the balance of regulation for responsible gaming versus over-regulating and actually driving negatives is a tenuous one.
All right. What is one country that you would propose is good to launch in Africa, with all your knowledge?
In terms of looking at, do you want to?
Yeah.
In terms of looking at from a regulatory framework?
Yeah, yes.
A few years ago, I would have said the UK, but I'm not sure there's one, and I'm sorry for the cop-out, but I think looking at a selection of some of the more established ones, like the UK, like Malta, like Isle of Man, some of the jurisdictions that offer those licenses, and cherry-picking from each, I think is the best way, because possibly Curacao, actually I see Aideen sitting in the audience here, and in particular for casino suppliers. But you know, I think it's a case of cherry picking, understanding what as a market, whether it's Zimbabwe or Kenya, you want to achieve, and building your own framework.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I agree fully with you that finding a good balance. To me, the most successful regulated markets are the ones that eliminate or vastly reduce the black market. So Denmark is, I would say, is a fairly good example. There's really good regulation in a lot of Europe, but for me, it's if you can actually move people, convince people, and have the right balance so that you vastly reduce or eliminate the black market.
So a minute each for any closing remarks. Something you would want to put across as we finish?
I'm actually interested to hear what you have to think about who's come into a specific country in Africa from outside of Africa and done it the right way.
All right. Andrew?
Yeah, I'd like to hear that too. I think we've only got a minute, so I want to give you the full minute.
All right. Thanks, you guys, and see you around.
Oh, no, wait. So our question was, we'd like to hear what you think. Who has done well as an operator coming from outside Africa into Kenya or South Africa? Who do you think has done a good job of localizing from outside Africa when they come into Africa?
In terms of products?
Yes.
I'll say There are good countries that are doing well, especially Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya. And with Rocos are also doing products. There are other products that are coming in the country and they are doing well. So I'll say these are good markets that you can invest in. They're also very well regulated, probably very much regulated, but also the operators who are in those countries and they are doing very well. So I think there are still good markets that operators can come in.